Hi everybody, Joe here from SHUTTERSPEAK Photography. Very nice to see your smiling faces again here on YouTube. Thanks for watching. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about focus shift shooting with your Nikon Z series camera. With the fall leaves coming down now, this is a great time to take advantage of some focus shift shooting. I'm going to show you why you're going to want to do that, and I'm going to set up two different scenarios for you with vastly different setups so that you have a real good understanding of how focus shift shooting works and why you'd want to use it. So essentially, why would you want to use it? Well, let's say you're out and there's some beautiful fall leaves coming down. You're at a real nice location for a landscape shot, but you want to have those leaves in the foreground nice and sharp, but you also want to have your background sharp. Now, you really can't do that in one shot. Even if you shot at f/22, you're going to have some of the image that's going to be out of focus, whether it be in the foreground or the background. So Nikon has a solution for that. It's called focus shift shooting. It's built into your Nikon Z camera. It's going to work great for this type of setup. It's easy to do. And then additionally, I'm going to run you through shooting something like a close-up shot. We're going to take this little land speeder with Luke and C3PO, and we're going to put it on the desk. And again, we're going to shoot this from close up, and it's a vastly different setup. And I'm going to show you that. And once you've seen these two different setups in action, you're going to be able to do this with any scenario that you come across. So before we get started, I'd just like to say thanks for watching. I appreciate you being here. And if anything in this video helps you out, please help me out by hitting subscribe and ring the bell so you get notified of updates when they come out for the channel. I would greatly appreciate that. It's something that, if anything that I've done helps you out, you can help me out by hitting that. And best of all, it's free, right? So thank you in advance. Also, feel free to hit that like button and leave me a comment, because I do answer most of them. So with that all out of the way, let's get started. Okay, so to get to focus shift shooting, head down to the photo shooting menu, and then you're going to have to scroll all the way down until you get to focus shift shooting. It's way at the bottom, second from the bottom actually. Okay, select focus shift shooting, and you're going to see a bunch of menu options here. First off is the number of shots. Now this is going to vary based on your shooting scenario. Shooting landscapes, generally you can do about 5 shots, and that should be enough. If you're shooting something very close up or in very close proximity to the camera, your depth of field is much more shallow, and you're going to need a lot more shots. Okay, so here's where you would pick the number of shots. You don't have to worry so much about picking too many, because when the camera reaches infinity, it will automatically stop. But you do have to worry about shooting too little, so better to go above than below. Focus step width is kind of a bit of a judgment call here. Okay, however, shooting something very close, you're going to want this to be narrow. If you were shooting a landscape, somewhere around here should be fine. Okay. It's again kind of a judgment call, and you got to play with it a little bit, but right around this setting right in the middle here, about 5 shots or so should get you through your average landscape. Interval till next shot, that's how much of a delay in between shots. If you're not using a flash or something like that, you can set this to 0. First frame lock for exposure. Yes, you're going to want to lock the exposure off the first shot, so each shot has the same exposure. Otherwise, you're going to have blending problems down the road. Peaking the stack image on or off doesn't really much matter. It doesn't affect anything. It's just for you to be able to see the depth of field at the end. Use it or don't use it, up to you. Silent photography, again, up to you. And you can change the storage folder to whatever folder you'd like based on this function. Okay, and then once you have everything set up, all you need to do is go up here to start, and then as soon as you press start, the camera will prepare and start shooting. So that's all there is to it. Let's try it out. Okay, so here's the setup of how we're going to shoot this first series of images. Obviously you see it's a close-up, so we're shooting with the Nikon Z7, but it doesn't matter what Z series camera it was. I have the 24-70 lens on, and of course you see the land speeder is right up front, and way off in the distance we have a little Jawa, and of course way back in the distance there's R2-D2, and you're going to see how there's just no way we would be able to focus on all of this, and how focus shift shooting is going to save the day. All right, so let's give it a try. Okay, so we're here in Lightroom, and we can take a look at the depth of field of each of these images and what focus shift shooting has done to help us out to get a crystal clear image across the board. So let's take a look. So you can see the first image, we're clearly focused somewhere down here, and it's important not to start on the land speeder here. We don't want to start here. If you notice, we did start down here because we want to get this foreground in focus also. Otherwise, when we do the stacking later in Photoshop, it's going to be a bit of a mess, and I'll show you why that is. So it's important to start as far down as you can. If we had started here on the back of the speeder, when we compiled the images later, this foreground would have been a blur, and it would have looked very awkward. So that's why I started down here. So start at the lowest point that you can in the image. Okay, and as we step through, we're going to see the focus point moving slightly until we get all the way to the back of the photo, and now you see the foreground going out of focus. Okay, so it looks like right around here, it looks like R2-D2, let's wait for this to load, is pretty much in focus. And even though we took 20, we probably really only needed about 12 or so. Focus shift shooting will stop when it reaches infinity. Okay, but in this case, it kept going because I guess it never reached infinity. But if we had set this to 100 photos, for example, and it only needed 25 to get to infinity, it would have stopped at 25. It wouldn't have taken 100. It's better to have more than less. In some cases, when you're out shooting landscapes, you're only going to need 4 or 5. When I was shooting, I was setting my shots at 5, and the camera was stopping at 4 because it had reached infinity in the focal plane. So you don't need to worry about going too high, but you definitely need to worry about going too low. So I'd rather have more images than less. Okay, so now let's take a look at how we can combine these 12 images. 2 different ways. We can do it through Photoshop, and also you could do it through On1. On1 has a merge feature built into it. However, it only uses, I believe, up to 14 images as its cap. In this case, since we only have 12, we could use it, but if we had needed all 20, it wouldn't have worked for us. I'm going to do it in Photoshop, just to show you how it looks in Photoshop, and let's get started with that. All right, so what we can do here is just do some basic edits. So we're going to just quickly go through here, and we're not going to do much just to keep this video from becoming too long, but we'll just apply a basic profile here, maybe add a little clarity and a little vibrance. That's good enough for now. I'm going to take these 12 photos, and we're going to right click on them, and we're going to go to edit in, and then we're going to say open layers in Photoshop. That's important. You want to open these as layers. If you don't open them as layers, they're going to be individual files, and you're not going to be able to merge them. So we'll wait a few seconds for this to load into Photoshop and open up all the layers. Okay, so we have all our layers now loaded into Photoshop, and the first step to this is we need to align the layers, just in case there's any slight movement in these images. Obviously, you know, we shot on a tripod, but nonetheless, we still need to align these layers just to make sure. Okay, so to align all these layers, you're just going to click on the first layer, shift click, and click on that top layer to select them all. Swing on over to the edit menu and then say auto align layers. Okay, projection, leave set to auto, and just say okay, and it's going to swing through its magic, and it's going to align these layers and make sure that they're perfect. If there's any variance, we're going to see a little bit of a highlighted area, and there usually is, and that's why it's always important to make sure you run through this step. Okay, so we have our layers aligned, and you can see on the edges there are some areas here that didn't line up perfectly, and it's very typical when you're doing this that you're going to need to do some cropping, and that's going to be okay. So the next step is we're going to go back into edit, and we're going to select the auto blend layers. Okay, this image dialog opens up, and if it's not already selected, check stack images and leave these two checkboxes checked and just say OK. And it's now going to step through each of these images Photoshop, taking the best parts and blending them into one image for us. Okay, so we have our final merged image at the top. We do have some areas here that we're missing, so Control D to deselect that. We're going to definitely have to do some cropping, and we have a little problem here where the merge didn't really grab the focused area as well as we would have liked. But that's okay. You can see each layer has a mask. Okay, so we can just deselect all of these images, and we're just going to pop this one on. This is our top layer there, and you can see that this has the closest focus. And let me just show you what that looks like. So this was the layer with the closest focus, and I could tell that just by the file number. It was the lowest file number, and we did start from the front and worked our way back. So in order to fix that, all I really need to do here is just paint in on the mask. And so let me grab my paintbrush tool and, oops, wrong color, paint in with white, and we can grab more of the foreground here. And just by grabbing more of the foreground, that's going to eliminate our focus problems up front. So how now the entire foreground looks much better. Okay, but again, we could just do a Control-Alt-Shift-E to stack that, and then we would have a stacked image of all of our fixed layers. Okay, so now again, we don't have that front focus problem anymore. We still would need to do a little bit of cropping, pull the image up to right around there. We don't need all of this wall, and we certainly don't need all of this. So if we pull this image into somewhere around here and did a crop, I'd be super happy with that. So let's take a look at that. Let's fit the screen, and you can see now how we have a super sharp depth of field across the entire image. And maybe we could have done a little bit better over here. But Photoshop seems to have done a really good job. You would have never been able to do this without focus shift shooting. You can see the sharpness of R2-D2 all the way back here, the sharpness of the Jawa over here, the land speeder, and the front desk. One thing I will say is if you have even the slightest speck of dust on anything, it is going to show up right away. And one of the things I did do was wiped everything down, and I blew off the characters with some compressed air first, because again, anything that settles on these is going to really pop in the image. Okay, so that's how this is going to work. And now I'm going to show you another example, but with some fall leaves in a landscape scenario that's going to be vastly different. Okay, let's check that out. Okay, so we're back inside Lightroom, but this time we have an outdoor setup. And in this scenario, I only needed 4 photos. So I was out with the Z7. I used focus shift shooting. I was shooting at f11 in aperture priority mode to keep the aperture consistent, and also I had auto ISO off to keep the ISO consistent throughout the image. I have 4 shots here. The goal was to keep these leaves in the foreground as sharp as we can get them, with having the background sharp as well. And you see how focus shifting has stepped through that till we get to our 4th image, where the background is sharper and the foreground is less sharp. So in this particular scenario, I had the camera set for 5 images. It reached focus at infinity at the 4th shot and automatically stopped shooting. So I didn't have to worry about having a 5th image. And again, it's going to be the same process. We're just going to select all of these, and we're going to go to Edit In and open as layers in Photoshop. Okay, so we have our 4 layers, and again, just shift click on the bottom layer with the top selected, go down to Image, Auto Align, Projection Auto, say OK, and in a minute it will align these, and then we'll merge them. And in the meantime, I'm going to go over a few things just to be aware of when you're working with this focus shift shooting. Okay, so again, into edit, auto blend, stack, and we'll say OK. So a few things to think about. Nikon tells us that when we're in focus shifting mode, we should choose an f-stop somewhere in the neighborhood of f8 to f11. Reason for that is that most lenses are sharpest in the middle, so you're going to get the maximum amount of sharpness. It doesn't mean that you can't use other apertures. This is just what's recommended, so anywhere between f8 and f11. In both of these scenarios, we used f11. Okay. During shooting, you could use the standby timer. However, if the standby timer runs out, you will not have to worry about that. The camera will continue to shoot. Okay, you can create that peaking stacked image, which we did in the first example, and that'll show us where our sharpness is, and that's handy. It's optional. You can keep that on or off. That's kind of up to you. If you're using a flash, something to look out for is that you have an interval set that's long enough for your flash to recycle. So using the interval until next shot setting, maybe you want to set a delay of 1 second, 2 seconds, just to give your flash enough time to recycle if you're using a flash. Okay, and in silent photography mode, if you did that, ISO sensitivities of high 0.3 to high 2 are not available. Neither is flash photography, exposure delay mode, or flicker reduction. None of those things would be available to you. Okay, so those just a couple of things to look out for, but aside from that, it's pretty straightforward. Really just set it up the way we did and hit that start button. Okay, so we now have our merged image, and we can take a look at this, and in this scenario, Photoshop nails it. We don't have to worry much about any kind of focus problems here. We have sharp focus throughout the image. Okay, so now well, we do have a little bit that's missed up there. Just deselect that, we're good. And again, it looks like we are good. We can zoom in down here, and we have sharpness here. We have our leaves here that are sharp, and then all the way back to the back of the frame. I'd probably do a little sky replacement here. And of course now in the latest version of Photoshop, that's actually built in. Okay, so to use sky replacement in Photoshop, just head on over to Edit, Sky Replacement. Again, this is the latest version of Photoshop only. And from here you have a bunch of different skies you can choose. And you'll see it actually updates in real time. So we'll just pick, let's take a look at this sky. That looks good. And again, we can shift the edges a little bit if we needed to, change the brightness and the temperature, flip the sky if we wanted to, again, adjust the lighting in the foreground, and just say, okay, we can pop that out to a new layer. We have our sky replaced. All right, so there you have it. That's pretty much the way focus shift shooting works. Get out there and shoot some fall leaves. I hope this video helps you out. If anything in this video does help you out, please help me out by hitting like, leave me a comment, and let me know your thoughts on how this works for you, or if you have any questions. I do tend to answer pretty much every question that gets thrown at me. Or at least I try to anyway. I can't answer everybody, but I try my best. So thanks again for watching. Please remember to subscribe. If anything here helped you out, hit that subscribe button, and I will see you next time, YouTube. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.